Okay, iPad Mini 6 versus iPad Mini 7. Should you upgrade from this to this? Oh, it's been an interesting week, hasn't it? So earlier this week, I published my full review of the iPad Mini 7, which is this here. And there's been lots of comments and lots of interaction and all sorts of things going on. So thank you if you watched that video and got involved. If you haven't subscribed yet, by the way, we've noticed that 87% of the people who watch this channel regularly aren't subscribed. I get that. I've done it myself. I've not clicked that button and people have reminded me to do it when they do this kind of thing. So if you do watch this channel regularly and you enjoy it, just give it a little, little click down there. It makes a massive difference. Thank you. Anyway, one of the biggest questions, one of the biggest points or topics of conversation is, should you upgrade from the iPad Mini 6 to the iPad Mini 7? It's quite an easy decision actually if you know everything you need to know about this. So in this video, I've basically listed about 5 or 6 of the most common points of differentiation between these two to try and help you either save money or spend money, I guess. Let's get into it. The first question is the iPad Mini 7 faster than the 6? And yes, it is. This has the A17 Pro chip, which is the same chip in the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max. You may have heard that the A17 Pro chip in here is binned, and binned basically means that it has one less GPU core than the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max. Does that matter? No. There's probably a very, very small subsection of buyers of the iPad Mini that might notice that occasionally, but that must be such a small part of the market. These binned chips, for most people, make no difference whatsoever. If you're doing very intensive graphics stuff, then you probably need an iPad Pro, to be completely honest. So I wouldn't worry about that. The stats for how much faster this is than this is that it has a 30% faster CPU and a 25% faster GPU. So it is quicker, and I haven't done benchmarking between the two because I just can't be bothered. I don't care about benchmarks. Those numbers mean nothing to me. They probably mean nothing to you. If you've been using the iPad Mini 6 and you're thinking, oh, it won't run the latest games, it's struggling when I use Lightroom, or I'm trying to use Final Cut Pro on it or Logic Pro and it just needs a bit more oomph, you'll get that from this. Next question, is the display on the iPad Mini 7 better than the iPad Mini 6? No, because I think it's identical. I think it's the exact same panel. Apple hasn't confirmed this, but it must be because it has the same 500 nits of peak brightness, P3 color, and it has a 60 Hz refresh rate, and it has the same sized bezels all around it. It's no different whatsoever. But that is the one miss, I think, that I'm not struggling with. I've got over it, I promise, but it's one thing I wish if we had our time again with the iPad Mini 7 that Apple did, which is add ProMotion. And I get that ProMotion for Apple is still the kind of pro feature. If you want a ProMotion MacBook, you have to get a MacBook Pro. Same thing with the iPad, you have to get the iPad Pro. But most smartphones these days on the Android side have a 120 Hz refresh rate, and if you've got used to that on your iPad Pro or on your iPhone, for instance, or on your MacBook, it's a bit jarring. There's no two ways about it, and annoyingly, it makes it feel occasionally a little bit slower than it obviously is. As I just mentioned, this is a very capable iPad. It's got a very fast chip in there, but it just feels a bit sluggish when you switch between the app screens, it doesn't really matter, to be honest. Once you're in the apps and you're kind of working away and you're just using and enjoying this thing, you do tend to forget about it. And equally, if you don't have an iPad Pro or an iPhone Pro or Pro Max that has a high refresh rate display, then you know no different, I guess. But I wish it had ProMotion. So hopefully Apple, next time on the 8th generation iPad Mini, we will have ProMotion. But the display is exactly the same. That brings me on to the next very common question. Jelly scrolling. Now, I can't show you this on this camera because it won't translate through the lens and onto the sensor, but basically jelly scrolling is when the refresh rate of the display in portrait mode doesn't keep up with itself. So if I did this, what you'd see is this kind of waving as one side of the display tries to keep up with the other. And it's, of all the questions I've been asked about the iPad Mini 7, this is right up there. And I'm not alone. Other videos, other people who have reviewed this, they're all covering this because it's such a big deal, seemingly. Now, has it changed? Has it improved beyond this? Sorry, from this to this? Well, I think it has a little bit. I'm going to do a test right in front of you now. I know you can't see this, but so I'm doing it on the iPad mini 6 and I can see very clearly it going like that. If I do the same thing on the iPad mini 7, it does the same thing, but it's a little bit less. In fact, it's quite a bit less. It's definitely not as bad as it is on the iPad mini 6. So if jelly scrolling is something that you can't live with and you can't stand, it's better. It is definitely still there, but it's better. Again, as I always say about jelly scrolling, it disappears when you view the iPad in landscape format. And if you just use the iPad, you don't notice it because you have to do that to notice it. And generally speaking, I just read the stuff on the page. The next question I've had quite a lot from people who are thinking about going from the iPad mini 6 to the 7 is, will my old cases work? So the cases that you've got for your iPad mini 6, do they work on the iPad mini 7? The answer is yes. This is a MOFT case. It's a brilliant case, by the way. I'll put a link down below so you can check it out. I can confirm this is the iPad mini 7. It has the exact same magnet structure because it fits the same. And that means obviously that if I take the new folio, the new iPad mini 7 folio, we can put the iPad mini 6 in that and it works. So if you have a bunch of old cases or accessories for your iPad mini 6, they will work with the iPad mini 7. I guess the big question is, what do you get if you go for the iPad mini 7 over the iPad mini 6? There's a few things just to very quickly go through. The first thing is Apple Intelligence. I can't talk about that at the moment because it's October in the UK as I film this. We don't get it fully until December as a public release. I'm waiting until then. I will cover it then on the iPad mini and the iPhone, etc. when it comes, basically. So make sure you hit subscribe not to miss that video. But you won't get that on the iPad mini 6. So if you've got the iPad mini 6 and you're thinking, ooh, I wouldn't mind trying Apple Intelligence, it won't work. You have to go for the iPad mini 7 to get that. The USB-C speeds are faster on this, so you get up to 10 gigabits per second on the 7 versus 5 gigabits per second on the 6. That's double the speed. So if you do a lot of transferring between this and perhaps SSDs and that sort of thing, happy days, this is going to be quite a bit faster. This also supports the Apple Pencil Pro. This has caused a bit of a stink here and there, but it doesn't bother me really. I think Apple has moved on from the second generation Apple Pencil. If you've got the second generation Apple Pencil with your iPad mini 6, that won't work with this one. You have to get either this, which is the Apple Pencil Pro, or the USB-C Apple Pencil. I wouldn't bother with that one. If you're going to upgrade from the 6 to the 7, you have to factor in the cost of this, the Apple Pencil Pro, into that upgrade price. Just bear that in mind. In terms of what you get for that extra spend, you get a much better Apple Pencil Pro. You get a much better Apple Pencil, which has barrel roll, which is this thing where you can twist it around in your finger and you can see the effect of that on the screen. This is the best thing. The squeezy, clicky haptic thing where you squeeze it and it feels like you're kind of clicking the pencil, and in doing so you get menus on the screen and all that sort of stuff. So it's quite a big upgrade. I understand why people are a bit annoyed by it, but it's better. If you take a lot of photos with your iPad mini 6, the camera system on the 7 is identical. It's the same hardware, but because of the A17 Pro chip, you do get Smart HDR4, which means in theory, and I still haven't tested this yet, I will do, I promise, but in theory, you should get better or slightly better photos in certain environments when you're out and about and it's very bright sunlight and all that sort of stuff. You should get slightly better photos. So if this is one of your main photographic companions, this will be a little bit better. This also has Wi-Fi 6E, which is faster than this. And the only other thing to mention is that this is eSIM only. So if you have the cellular version of the iPad mini 6, and for some reason, if you enjoy switching between physical SIM cards, if that's a thing, not judging by the way, but if that is a thing for you, bear in mind that you have to switch to digital eSIMs with the iPad mini 7. There is one other question though, which a lot of people should be able to relate to. Now, I've got no official word from Apple to back this up, but I think if you read between the lines in the marketing for the iPad mini, and also if you just read the comment section from my previous video, it's fairly clear, I think, that the main buyer for this is the corporate world. It's the aviation industry. It's the architectural industry, particularly the aviation industry. I never thought I'd say this, but a lot of pilots got in touch on my last video to say, this is great news. You know, I've got my iPad mini 6. It's been in my flight trousers all this time and the screen's broken. The battery isn't lasting as long. The fact that Apple has updated it and it's the same thing that I can rely on, that I've been depending on this thing for the last 3 years. I just need a new one with a faster chip. If that's the case, I mean, I'm not going to get into this again because I talked about this in my full review. I'll leave a link to that review at the end of this one. The iPad mini fan club, of which I'm a part, and I wanted ProMotion and Face ID and smaller bezels and, you know, a redesigned frame and all this stuff. I think we're quite a small part of the market for the iPad mini. The corporate side, I think, is quite significant. So if you live in that world, you know, if you've been depending on this iPad mini 6 for the last 3 years and the screen is dead and the battery is almost dead and you just need a new one, this is great news because you've got a faster chip and you get access to Apple Intelligence, which could be very useful for your business and for your industry, and you get compatibility with a much better Apple Pencil. It's a really good upgrade from the 6 to the 7 if that's you. This is a really simple conclusion. If you've got the iPad mini 6 and you're happy with it, just stick with it. If, however, you're excited by Apple Intelligence and you just want something faster, get yourself the iPad mini 7. Just bear in mind that if you use the Apple Pencil, you need to budget for the Apple Pencil Pro. And thirdly, if you work in an industry that means you have to use one of these daily and your iPad mini 6 is falling apart, get this. I'd love to know though, are you going to get yourself an iPad mini 7? If so, get involved in the comments. And equally, if you're not going to buy one, why? What should Apple have done to make you buy this? And if you want to see my full review of the iPad mini 7, hang around for a link to that video.